Yesterday, we finished reading the 4 objective domains: contemplation of body, contemplation of feeling, contemplation of mind, and contemplation of phenomena. Today, we are going to continue and we will finish the introduction and maybe read a few suttas. Although not specified in the sutta, a progressive sequence seems to be implied by the terms describing each contemplation. In mindfulness of breathing, one moves to subtler levels of quiescence. In contemplation of feeling, one moves toward non-carnal feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. In contemplation of mind, one moves towards states of mind that are concentrated and liberated. These all suggest that progressive contemplation brings enhanced concentration. In the contemplation of phenomena, the emphasis shifts toward insight. One begins by observing and overcoming the 5 hindrances. The overcoming of the hindrances marks success in concentration. With the concentrated mind, one contemplates the 5 aggregates and the 6 sense bases. As contemplation gains momentum, the 7 factors of enlightenment become manifest, and the development of the 7 enlightenment factors culminates in knowledge of the 4 noble truths. Knowledge of the 4 noble truths liberates the mind from the defilements and thus leads to the attainment of Nibbana. Thus, this system of meditation fulfills the potential ascribed to it by the Buddha of leading directly to the realization of Nibbana. So this paragraph explains that there is a progressive sequence implied by the contemplation of the 4 domains. Okay, Sister Chai-Kwan, would you like to continue?
Each major contemplative exercise is supplemented by an auxiliary section, a refrain, with 4 subdivisions. The first states that the meditator contemplates the object internally, within his or her own experience. Externally, reflectively considering it as occurring within the experience of others, and both. This ensures that one obtains a comprehensive and balanced view of the object. The second portion states that the meditator contemplates the object as subject to origination, as subject to vanishing, and as subject to both origination and vanishing. This brings to light the characteristic of impermanence and thus leads to insight into the 3 characteristics: impermanence, suffering, and non-self, anicca, dukkha, anatta. The third states that the meditator is simply aware of the bare object to the extent necessary for constant mindfulness and knowledge. And the fourth describes the meditator as dwelling in a state of complete detachment, not clinging to anything in the world. Thank you.
Thanks, Sister Chai-Kwan. So this paragraph explains the 4 subdivisions. The first subdivision contemplates the object internally within our own experience and also externally, reflecting the experience of others, and also both. So in this case, we can obtain a balanced view of the object. The second one, the second subdivision, we contemplate the object. The object is subject to the origin, the vanishing, both origin and the vanishing. Why? So that it brings light the characteristics of impermanence and sheds light into the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanent, suffering, and non-self. The third one, be aware of the bare object for constant mindfulness and knowledge. And the last one, contemplate in a state of complete detachment, not clinging to anything in the world. Okay, Sister Saiken, would you like to continue?
In the Satipatthana Sutta, mindfulness of breathing, anapanasati, is included as merely one meditation subject among others. But the Nikayas assigned it a position of fundamental importance. The Buddha said that he used mindfulness of breathing as his main meditation subject for the attainment of enlightenment. See Samyutta Nikaya 54.8. During his teaching career, he occasionally went into seclusion to devote himself to the concentration gained through mindfulness of breathing, and he confers on it a unique honor by calling it the Tathagata's dwelling, Samyutta Nikaya 54.11. Mindfulness of breathing is the subject of an entire chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya 54, Anapana Samyutta. Whereas the Satipatthana Sutta explains mindfulness of breathing by a 4-step formula, the suttas in this collection expands practice to 16 steps. Text chapter 8, section 9, from the Anapana Samyutta describes the 16 steps. Since these steps are not necessarily sequential, but partly overlap, they might be thought of as facets rather than actual steps. The 16 facets are grouped into 4 tetrads, each of which correspond to one of the 4 establishments of mindfulness. The first tetrad contains the 4 facets mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta in its section on contemplation of the body, but the other tetrads extend the practice to the contemplations of feelings, mind, and phenomena. Thus, the development of mindfulness of breathing can fulfill not just one, but all 4 establishments of mindfulness. The 4 establishments of mindfulness, based on mindfulness of breathing, in turn fulfill the 7 factors of enlightenment, and these in turn fulfill true knowledge and liberation. This exposition thus shows mindfulness of breathing to be a complete subject of meditation that begins with simple attention to the breath and culminates in the permanent liberation of the mind.
Okay, thanks, Sister Saiken. This sutta talks about the mindfulness of breathing in detail, and most importantly, mindfulness of breathing can fulfill not just one, but all 4 of the establishments of mindfulness, and thus can lead all the way to the liberation of the mind. Sister Billy, would you like to continue?
Finally, in text 8, section 10, the Buddha's chief disciple, Venerable Sariputra, testifies to his own achievement of mastery over the mind. In reply to questions from the Venerable Ananda, he explains how he is able to dwell for a whole day in each of the jhanas and formless attainments, as well as in the special attainment called the cessation of perception and feeling. Sanya Veda Itani Rodha. In each case, because he is an Arahant, he can do so without grasping these attainments with thoughts of I and mine.
Thanks, Sister
Thank you.
Pali. So here we can hear the testimony by the chief disciple, Venerable Sariputra. Testimony of what? His own achievement of mastery over the mind. It sounds pretty cool when we can master our mind, not being attached, not being controlled by anything. We are our own control. And because he's an Arahant, he can do so without grasping this attainment with thoughts of I and mine. Okay, and that concludes the introduction of this chapter. Let's read a few sutta. Sister Aikim, would you like to read?
Chapter 8, Mastering the Mind. 1. The mind is the key. I do not perceive even one other thing, O monks, that is so unwilling as an undeveloped mind. An undeveloped mind is truly unwilled. 2. I do not perceive even one other thing, O monks, that is so willing as a developed mind. A developed mind is truly willed. 3. I do not perceive even one other thing, O monks, that leads to such great harm as an undeveloped mind. An undeveloped mind leads to great harm. 4. I do not perceive even one other thing, O monks, that leads to such great benefit as a developed mind. A developed mind leads to great benefits. 9. I do not perceive even one other thing, O monks, that when undeveloped and uncultivated entails such great sufferings as the mind. The mind, when undeveloped and uncultivated, entails great suffering. 10. I do not perceive even one other thing, O monks, that when developed and cultivated, entails such great happiness as the mind. The mind, when developed and cultivated, entails great happiness. From Anuttara Nikaya 1, Section 3.
Sadhu.
I just checked, how come there's 4 and then jump to 9 and 10?
Oh, I think Bhikkhu Bodhi skips 5 to 8 because it's probably not talking about the mind. Or it could be a mistake in print. But good observation. Thanks, Sister Akim. Okay, so we start off with reading about what undeveloped mind can lead to, and what, on the other hand, what developed and cultivated mind can lead to. Such great happiness, if not cultivated, can lead to such great harm. Okay. Okay, Sister Shami, would you like to continue?
I do not, sorry,
Number 2.
developing a pair of skills, serenity and insight. 2 things, O monks, partake of true knowledge. What 2? Serenity and insight. When serenity is developed, what benefit does one experience? The mind is developed. When the mind is developed, what benefit does one experience? All lust is abandoned. When insight is developed, what benefit does one experience? Wisdom is developed. When wisdom is developed, what benefit does one experience? All ignorance is abandoned. A mind defiled by lust is not liberated, and wisdom defiled by ignorance is not developed. Thus, monks, through the fading away of lust, there is liberation of mind, and through the fading away of ignorance, there is liberation by wisdom.
Thanks, Sister Shomi. This is taken from Anguttara Nikaya 2. Footnotes number 4. MP, the commentary. When serenity is developed independently of insight, it leads to the suppression of the 5 hindrances. The first of which is sensual lust, and culminates in the higher mind, adhicitta, of the jhanas, characterized by the absence of lust. But it is only when serenity is developed in conjunction with insight that it can give rise to the noble path, which eradicates the underlying tendency to sensual lust by the path of non-returning and attachment to existence by the path of arahantship. MP interprets serenity here in this second sense, presumably on account of the last sentence of the sutta. Getting a little bit technical. Footnotes number 5. MP again, the commentary. It is the wisdom of the supramundane path, Magga Panya, that is developed. The ignorance is abandoned. It's the great ignorance at the root of the cycle of existence. The footnotes number 6. Arahantship is often described as taintless liberation of mind, liberation by wisdom, anasawa, chato vimutti, panya vimutti. MP explains liberation of mind, chato vimutti, as the concentration connected with the fruit of arahantship. Liberation by wisdom, panya vimutti, as the wisdom connected with the fruit. MP is referring to the meditative attainment of the fruit of arahantship. Arahata Wala Phala Samapatti, a supramundane meditative absorption in which the arahant experiences the bliss of nibbana. Okay, that's the second sutta. Let's continue. See. Okay. 4 ways to arahantship. Thus have I heard, on one occasion, the Venerable Ananda was dwelling at Kosambi, in Gosita's monastery. There, the Venerable Ananda addressed the monks thus: "Friends." "Yes, friend," the monks replied. Thereupon, the Venerable Ananda said, "Friends, whatever monks or nuns declare before me that they have attained the final knowledge of arahantship, all these do so in one of 4 ways. What for? Here, friends, a monk develops insight, preceded by serenity. While he thus develops insight preceded by serenity, the path arises in him. He now pursues, develops, and cultivates that path, and while he is doing so, the fetters are abandoned and the underlying tendencies eliminated. Footnote number 7. Samatha Pubang Gamang Vipassana. MP. This refers to a meditator who first obtains serenity and then takes up insight meditation. The commentators call such a meditator one who makes serenity the vehicle of practice. Samatha Yanika. See Visuddhimagga 587, ppn 18.3. Then footnotes number 8. The path, Magga, is the first supramundane path, that of stream entry. To develop that path, according to MP, means to practice for the attainment of the 3 higher paths. On the 10 feathers, see page 374, 375. On the 7 underlying tendencies, see page 426, footnotes number 5 of chapter 1. Okay, so this first paragraph is developing serenity first and then insight. In other words, develop insight preceded by serenity. Okay, Sister Choi Kwan, would you like to continue?
Or again, friends, a monk develops serenity preceded by insight. While he thus develops serenity preceded by insight, the path arises in him. He now pursues, develops, and cultivates the path. And while he is doing so, the factors are abandoned and the underlying tendency eliminated. Or again, friends, a monk develops serenity and insight joined in pairs. While he thus develops serenity and insight joined in pairs, the path arises in him. He now pursues, develops, and cultivates that path. And while he is doing so, the factors are abandoned and the underlying tendencies eliminated. Or again, friends, a monk's mind is seized by agitation about the teaching. But there comes a time when his mind becomes internally steady, composed, unified, and concentrated. Then the path arises in him. He now pursues, develops, and cultivates that path. And while he's doing so, the factors are abandoned and the underlying tendencies eliminated. Friends, whatever monks or nuns declare before me that they have attained the final knowledge of arahantship, or they do so in one of these 4 ways. From Anuttara Nikaya 4.170. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, thanks, Sister Choi Kwan. Let's read a few of the footnotes. Number 9. Vipassana Pubanamang Samathang. MP. This refers to one who, by natural bent, first attains to insight, and then, based on insight, produces concentration. In the commentarial literature, this is called one who makes insight the vehicle, Vipassana Yanika. See Visuddhimagga 588, ppn 18 form. Footnotes number 10. Samatha Vipassanang Yuganadang. In this mode of practice, one enters the first jhana and then, after emerging from it, applies insight to that experience. In other words, one sees the 5 aggregates of the jhana, form, feeling, perception, etc., as impermanent, bound up with suffering and non-self. And then one enters the second jhana and contemplates it with insight. One applies the same procedure to the other jhanas as well until the path of stream entry, etc., is realized. And the last footnotes of this sutta, number 11. Damudacha vigahitang manasang hoti. MP says that agitation, udacha, arises here as a reaction to the 10 corruptions of insight, vipassa, nupa, kilesa, that one misunderstands as indicating path attainment. On the corruptions of insight, see Visuddhimagga 633 to 38, ppn 20-105 to 28. It is possible, however, that the agitation about the teaching is mental distress, brought on by eagerness to realize the Dharma. This state of spiritual anxiety, when suddenly resolved, can sometimes precipitate an instantaneous experience of awakening. For example, see the story of Bahiya Daruchiriya and Udana 110. Lengthy footnotes. And with that, we have finished reading 3 suttas. Okay, just to highlight. The first one is in serenity first and insight. The second way, develop insight first and then serenity. The third way, do it in tandem. As explained in the footnotes. Enter the first jhana and then contemplates the impermanence. Enter the second jhana, contemplates the impermanence until one reaches stream entry. And the last one is when the monk is seized by agitation about the teaching. So these are 4 ways to attain the final knowledge of arahantship. Okay, any questions or comments? We finished the introduction today. We read through 3 suttas. Not bad to start the day, including the meditation earlier. If no questions or comments, Sister Shomi, would you like to do the dedication?
回向，愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。
Thanks, Sister Shomi. Till we meet again, we will be guided by the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Have an insightful Wednesday ahead. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.